Hello, everyone, and welcome to Monday and the Presents Posse, presenting another topic about presents. And today is, are you fooled? Are you confused? Today we're talking about presents and April Fool. And we're actually showing up like we said we would. Did we fool you? Yay. Yay.
Could have been a cruel joke.
It could have been a cruel joke for those of you who look forward to every Monday because of the Presents Posse. And
Like we
God
do.
bless you. As we do. Yes, we love the Presents Posse and we love being here with you. Bobby Cobb, Danielle McMahon, and me, Miriam Siegel. So, presents and April Fools. Why and what do those things have to do with each other, if anything? Who wants to go first?
I'll give it a little shot. When I thought of this topic, when we, kind of settled on it, immediately I thought of a book from about 4 or 5 years ago. I think a researcher by the name of Donald Hoffman, and he wrote a book called The Case Against Reality: Why Evolution Has Hid the Truth from Our Eyes. Or I may be getting that subtitle right, but the main thing is right. And I think it could be fun to explore the idea that we are living in this perceived reality largely guided by our conditioning. And we've been conditioned to see the world in one way. And that way is true to the degree that we, live our lives throughout our conditioning. And simultaneously, which I think is what the Presence Posse is all about, there's this layer of deepness underneath all of that. And I think this is a good day to, we were talking before we went on about, I just got fooled by a news story and they got me hook, line, and sinker. I mean, and it was a beautiful thing. And I did a post on Facebook saying, at least today the fake news is designed to make us laugh. And it's a good opportunity for us to pause and just kind of think about, is nature fooling us? Is our conditioning fooling us? And really an invitation to explore just a deeper look at it. So our show, as always, will go wherever it goes. And sometimes we get down such yummy rabbit holes. But that was the first thing that popped into my mind as I considered this topic. How about you, Danielle?
Well, not a whole lot popped into my mind initially. I mean, it did kind of remind me of an episode that we have done quite some time ago called Ego as Trickster. So how much are we fooled by that, right? On lots of different levels. But I also saw a Facebook post that I thought was appropriate for today. So it says that most people don't even know that today's the beginning of the new year. The story behind April Fools is it is the new year, but you've been fooled by the establishment because in the late 1700s, they changed the calendar. It's all programming, so most people will argue and not research it for themselves. The original calendar is 13 months, and every month had 28 days. So maybe we've all been fooled into not knowing that today is the actual New Year's Day.
Or is it?
Or is it?
Yeah,
Like we
is that a
made up
joke?
time, so we make up calendars. So, but it would make sense to have 13 months and have them all be 28 days.
And yeah, and be like actually in harmony with the lunar cycle,
Yes.
which is the way that we used to live.
Well,
I suspect there's a hint of truth in that post, and if it was meant, if it wasn't serious if it's an April Fool's kind of
No, it's
joke.
serious, and it has a picture of the International Fixed Calendar, corrected in accordance with ISO 8601 date and time standard. So I don't know where this person got this from, but the month between June and July is called Sol, S-O-L.
Which means sun.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, the Mayan calendar does that. I think it's 13 months. And I believe if you do the 28 days times 13, you come up with 364, I think. Somebody can double check that. And then there's a free day, which is like probably would be in the month of Sol on that calendar. That is the Mayan free day. And that is a day of celebration where you pause to reflect on how the last year went and to set your intentions into the new year. And just another way of looking at things. And I think I've talked about this before, but we do a new moon and a full moon celebration at my physical center. And when we first started doing that, it was about a year and a half ago. I changed all of my my beginning of the month and end of the month rituals that I follow. And I did that in harmony with the new moon instead of in harmony with the calendar. And it felt different. And I'm still doing it. I've kept right on doing that. So, yeah, interesting. How about you, Miss Miriam?
Well, one of the things I think about on April Fools, and since it is Presents and April Fools, and we are the Presents Posse, it is the idea that on April Fool's Day, interestingly enough, we tend to, well, now I'm generalizing, so I'm just going to let you know that that's what I'm doing. We tend to pay more attention because we know that we're going to be set up to be fooled. And sometimes we catch it and sometimes we don't. So one could claim that we're more present to what's going on. We're noticing more precisely because it's April Fool's Day. And sometimes we catch it. Like you were talking about, Bobby, you didn't catch it right away. I started reading something. This guy, Tim, I think it was Brown. I can't remember his last name, but Brownstone or something like that. Sorry, Tim. He wrote a blurb about this is the best coaching technique, do this and do that. And it was hilarious. Like the first couple of sentences, I was like, oh yeah, like the typical, this is how you're going to earn your 10K per month, whatever. I actually sent it to you guys, right? And it got funny. Like it was just, the guy has obviously read a lot of these different kinds of posts. He included everything. It was so funny. But at the very beginning, it started like you would think, okay, this guy's got something to sell. And so it took me a second and then I just kept reading. It was really long, which is another thing, right? And it was like, I read the whole thing because I knew it was going to be good the whole way through. And it was brilliant. But anybody who might have skimmed it because you're used to seeing that kind of thing might have thought it was a real thing and was like, okay, I'm going to either ignore the guy because I've already seen and I've got a coach already and blah, blah, blah. Or I might have thought, well, I want to ask him what his deal is and see if it's, a good price or whatever. But he even called his technique scam, and he had it was an abbreviation or like an acronym, and he had a title for the thing. I can't remember what secret coach, something or other. It was so funny. But I think the best pranks on April Fools are the ones where you're aware, but you may not be that aware. Like you start getting roped in and all of a sudden, oh yeah, that you might not even have noticed if you hadn't considered that it's April Fool's Day and somebody's pulling your leg. So that's my thought when it comes to present and April Fools is, are we more present and noticing what people are saying, what we're reading, what we're seeing, like this little thing, because it's April Fool's, and can that help us get present and be more present? And how can we bring that into the rest of our days and moments and lives. If we notice that it's actually helping us become aware, like avoiding falling for things,
Yeah.
noticing and getting ourselves out of trouble, April Fool's Day can be an incredible gift for us and an opportunity to train presence. And just before we switch, I'd just like to say hello to our viewers. I know, Rosalie, you're there. Hi, happy April Fools and happy Easter. Of course, it's the last day of Easter. And whoever else you are there, please let us know you're there. And you are welcome to share. And of course, we'd love to hear a little bit about what kind of April Fool's pranks you have tried or fallen for or not. So
Yeah, I think this is that concept of using this as tapping into the energy that we've got of asking, am I being fooled here? Am I being fooled here? Am I being fooled here? And use that as our mantra of, we spend so much time traveling and we're so conditioned to that we get lost in that. And I think it's useful to, kind of going back to that previous one of ego as trickster of, have I been fooled again? Am I acting out of just habitual conditioning that's saying this is the track that you need to be on, and not being in the moment? And I think it can be very useful as a practice. Maybe for the Mindful Life Institute or whatever, it can become the national holiday of peer presence, and the official new year for the Presence Posse podcast.
the other thing is, am I fooling myself?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Danielle, I'm thinking of that you're thinking of that. I'm thinking of you and even the idea of the ego as trickster and the April Fool's Day and the 7 mirrors.
Right. So it was almost a question of, how am I being fooled here? Right? Not if I'm being fooled, because we're all sort of playing this role as a human, right? Interacting with other humans. And yet it's all in our perception. It's all mirroring back to us what we've been programmed to believe, or what we took as truth when we didn't have a filter. Like, very young humans don't have a filter, they just take it all in, right? And so then there's our baseline. Are we fooling ourselves because we've taken in things that aren't accurate? Or are we being fooled now because we have something being mirrored to us, maybe to point out that we're being fooled, right? So that we can take that in and make an adjustment if it's not something that serves or supports or helps us in some way, that then we can do something different with it. So yeah, I think that is sort of a good mantra for mindfulness. Not just am I being fooled, but how am I being fooled this time?
Yeah, and then diving into the implications of that and seeing what we see. We had a speaker at our at the center a couple of weeks ago, and she was just brilliant, and but was really nervous, and she talked about that as she began her presentation. God, I hope I make it through this. And I wore black today because the last time I spoke here I wore tan, and I on the video I could see that I had giant pit sweat stains, and that wasn't pretty. And I spoke to her afterwards. I spent a little time to her afterwards, and it reminded me of I was a public speaker for quite a while of my career. That was kind of my gig. And I always got nervous before my presentations. And I learned really good coping mechanisms to help with that. I got, I started thinking of the butterflies in my stomach as butterflies that were going to help to, it was gearing me up to deliver the message, and the butterflies were going to go away. They always went away as soon as I started speaking. And so I just started to think of that, the butterflies will leave as my message is being delivered. They're here, they're gathering to deliver my message. And initially, or for a long time, actually, that was a very effective way of helping me deal with that, because then when the nerves started to come up, I didn't get all up in my head about it. I'm like, oh, welcome, butterflies, come on in. Yes, the message is going to be delivered. And that was a really good coping mechanism. But when I started to dig in a little bit deeper than that, I was like, what is at the root of this conditioning? That why am I so wrapped up in this? Because I do it all the time. I was relatively good at it. I mean, good enough that I got invited back and, made a career out of it. And I just in like sitting with that for a little bit, it somehow occurred to me, I think on a deep level, that if I screw this up, it's going to be really bad in my life in some big way. And I screwed up plenty of times. One of my earliest presentations, I handed out like a comment sheet and everything, and it was awful. I knew my presentation. I could feel that it was awful the whole way through it. And in my head, I'm going, how do I get this back on track again? And I never did. I mean, it was just, it was awful. So I'm saying, well, this is going to be some very constructive criticism. And one of the guys in there wrote, I want my day back. And man, that just ripped my heart open. Just the thought that he thought spending time with me was a complete waste of his day. And that was like in 2003. And actually, in so many ways, and this won't surprise you guys at all, that ended up becoming such a wonderful gift for me, because it was there with me, and say, okay, you don't want that again. So, cross your I's and dot your T's, and don't do the sloppy stuff that you did, that you weren't prepared for where you were going into. And so that influenced my thinking going forward, and then, reframing the butterflies and all of that. And it just, all of that made it easier. But it was the realization that I was making up a very dire consequence in my head if this presentation wasn't phenomenal. And it was like the moment that I realized that, all of that just fell away. It just dissolved. And so, which that also became like a really cool gift, because that, I think for me, that was the first time I experienced the real power of a true insight to just erase this facade that I had built up in my mind and all of these consequences. And it was just like a holy cow kind of moment. This is deep. And really that insight, that about 4 or 5 years ago, I guess, I don't know, but it really informed a lot of the work that I do now, to say there is something deeper, and reality is fooling us. We think that I was on a phone with an old friend earlier today, and he was lamenting that and he and I are very wired the same. We're got a lot of energy, and we use it well. And we're, when we're on, we're kind of fun to be around. And he's got a son who's 22 years old, who's not that way. He's very shy, and he's very withdrawn, and he plays a lot of video games and everything. And I shared with them a story of a mutual friend that we had who was like that, but now is like an executive VP at Twitch. And he's making bazillions of dollars and couldn't be happier. And he's just found his lane. So I just asked this friend of mine, is it okay with you if that's just how he's wired, and can he grow up? And that was one of those things for him. He's kind of like, wow, I never really thought about that. I'm so tied to him needing to be kind of a mini me, version of, and this guy's really successful, that, I just didn't, it was like, it never had occurred to him that maybe his son is just on another path, and that can be okay too. And, so I think all of these things are just opportunities for us to just check in and see, what do I have to believe to make, what is the structure of this belief that I've got that's causing me a little bit of pain and suffering in this moment? And is any of that real? And, go within and check it out and kind of deconstruct some of those ideas. And man, doing this work, I'm my own number one client, and doing this work on myself, it is startling to me how many things that I do now because of something that my parents told me when I was 7 or 8. And, they've served me well. There's nothing wrong with them. But now they're, it's kind of like an old car that you used to have that you really loved when you had it and it was a hot car, but you've gotten rid of it and you've just moved on, and now you've got another car that you love equally as well. I think some of these beliefs have a life. These ideas are born, we accept them, we use them to thrive for a while. The ones that we hang on to, we keep, and perhaps at some point later, they just fade away, and they're not useful to us anymore. So it's a good opportunity, I think, for exploration. I don't know how that hits you guys, and what are your thoughts on that, or anything else for that matter?
Well, I think that you did a really nice job explaining how quickly a belief can be let go. Like, you just chose to let that go. There are no dire consequences to this. And the physical trigger that you'd been experiencing went.
Yeah.
Right? It was just that simple. And we tend to try to make it very complicated, because as human beings, we tend to do that. We like complex, and and we're able to do that. And it just doesn't have to be. It can be very simple to let a belief go, to let a perception go, and say, oh, I was being fooled. Right? On April Fool's Day, we don't take those pranks that people play like they have dire consequences. They're
Right.
amusing. They're for amusement, right? So and I think Miriam's really good at this. She's constantly amused by herself, right? Thoughts that she thinks, and she just starts giggling like that. And you're like, what? What are you giggling at? I'm just
Well, I am kind of ridiculous. I have so many weird thoughts. But the nice thing about it is it's a thought, and it's very easy a lot of the time to just reveal that to myself, that I'm having a thought, and then how ridiculous, how funny that, and I mean, it's just, we're so human, right? And so I just become so human. It's like, yeah, of course I have that thought, and it's funny. It's not a catastrophe. I make it into catastrophe if I want to, if I need some drama or some excitement or some attention. Because the thing about, if you don't mind me mentioning, Bobby, the idea of, okay, I'm going to go on stage and I'm talking about something, it's all about me.
Yeah.
I'm right. I can be really good. And I'm a concert performer, right? I sing on stage, and I even just recently we did a really big concert. It lasted like 3 hours with a lot of different performers, and before I went on stage, I was just sort of checking with myself the thoughts I was having, and any kind of expectations I was having for myself, and that idea of, Miriam, it isn't about you. It's about the music that you are performing and the people who are hearing it, and the communication that you have with them when you have this opportunity to be on stage. So when I hear you talking, Bobby, I think, it's what you're talking about and to whom, and that sort of communication. It's not you. Although for some people who maybe are very self-loathing and self-judgmental, it might be about you because they judge themselves, so they judge you. Because I can do that. Not about you, of course, not about you, but but I can judge other people because I'm trying to make myself feel better, like, oh, I wouldn't have done that, or I'm better than them, or whatever, and that's just crap. But just the idea that it's not me, it's it. And it takes the onus off of me. I don't have to play that game with myself, and then it's not a catastrophe either. And if it is a catastrophe, I started thinking about Fred, to be honest. If he were here, I suspect he might have mentioned Byron Katie and the work, as he does every once in a while. And one of her questions, I think it's like the first question in her work, is it true? Mm-hmm. And I love that for revealing any kind of catastrophic thinking. It's like, okay, like I do, is a thought. That's my way. But her way is it true? Oh, no, likely not. And then later on, one of her other questions is, who would I be without this thought? And you, Bobby, got really quickly from, is it true, Mo, to who would I be? Well, you suddenly were, right? So let it go. And I love that. So, but my thing is, I can really enjoy, and it's the idea of fooling ourselves. I love that you mentioned that, Danielle. The idea of us knowing what's coming is a prank, generally speaking, unless we're fooled. And then actually one of the things that I thought about, since we're talking about presents and April Fools, and maybe I'm digressing a bit too much, but when we actually fall for it, I've done that. You wouldn't believe. I mean, it was just because I was driving a car and somebody said something and I wasn't sort of paying attention to two things at once and wasn't really paying attention. So I went, really? And the person went, no, of course not. Right. Whatever the person said. And how much of an idiot did I feel like? So, and what did I do with that? Right. So it's like when we actually get fooled, what do we do to ourselves? How do we behave? What mask do we put on, if any? What is it that has us feeling like we may need to hide or repair something? Those are some of the things I thought about. You were going to say something, Bobby.
I just, one cool thing about today, I did get caught out this morning on that fake news story, and I loved it. I love that, even though I'm kind of looking forward, not closely enough, evidently, but that I was still able to get caught out. And it was just like immediately, this is a guy that I read almost every day. And I'm like, good on you, Jeff Childers. You got me. That's beautiful. And I remember one a couple of years ago, NPR, National Public Radio here in the US, did one about the movement away from carbs and the adverse consequences that it was having on the maple syrup industry. And they went to interview people and they said, and they had like this country guy from Maine with a Maine accent, and he's New England accent, and he's saying, it's trouble out here in the woods because the trees are just exploding. They can't get rid of the maple syrup. and then it went on, and I think they went to Guam, where because there was such a maple syrup shortage now, they were having to like grind up their picnic tables that were made of maple to get the additional syrup. And I was just going on and on. And I went to talk to the person I was living with then. And I'm like, can you believe this? And she is just cracking up. And I'm like, why is this so funny? This seems like a catastrophe. And she says, it's April Fool's, dense one. And it felt so good to just have that release and to catch ourselves out. And if I could, can I just share a like on the topic story, but a new thing?
Nope.
No,
Of
no,
course.
yes.
April Fools.
Where,
You said no, I said yes. So
Make sense of that one.
I'm on the phone, and I've talked about this before, and I thought it was dead, but it's not. I used to get like really, really wound up with customer service and just people that I'm dealing with on the phone. And I got a call on Friday, and it was about a survey. And eventually they got into the survey, and I got triggered. And I'm like, why are you asking me this? This is none of your business. Blah, 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 blah. And I ended up kind of splattering all over my anger on this poor woman who's on the phone. And then after that, I went and told the guava all about it. And she's just like shaking her head going, oh my God, what am I going to do with you? And she was kind of upset because she's like, you got to realize she's not the one who's asking those questions. She's being paid to ask those questions. And I'm like, I got all of that. And I sat with it, and I'm just kind of like, man, I thought this was gone, but here it's reared its ugly head today. And I thought, well, what's going on? And, I could see that in me. And then I thought about her, and I wondered, like, is she having a bad day? And, I've been on that side of the phone too. And I'm like, no, she's not having a bad day. She is playing my rant because it was a recorded conversation to all of her friends. And she's like, you are not going to believe this guy that I just got off the phone. And they're laughing. And I went back into Carla and I said, psychic mind reading, here's what's actually going on with her. And she's going to go home later today, and her boyfriend or husband or whoever is going to say, how was your day, dear? And she's like, oh my God, have I got a story to tell you? And then I thought, if I could just communicate to her and let her know that what in essence I ended up doing in that moment was I ran to mommy. I went to tell the guava, I can't believe just the thing I got on this phone, and they were asking these questions and blah, blah, blah. And so I did get angry, and the anger was real. The trigger was real. But thankfully, that was kind of, it was not a rumble strip on the highway of life. It was like a steel guardrail that I banged up to and eventually got back in my lane again. And the beautiful thing that experience showed me was, to the degree that I'm tied to the fact of, I am on the Presence Posse podcast. I'm a mindfulness coach. I can't be losing my shit. And that
is it a requirement?
It's not, but in my head, and I think in many people's heads, that were like any of the clients that I coach, if they were to see that, they would go, God, I'm paying this guy to coach me on how to be mindful. That doesn't seem like a really good investment. And there's that thinking that is in my head. I can't let people see that. I've got to put the mask up. So I've got to now become the trickster and pretend that I'm this grounded, enlightened guy that it never experiences any emotion other than bliss, love, and joy. And I'm just like this overflowing cup, and I'm pleasant to be around. And that's just a BS story. That is April Fool's Day every day. And I don't think it's about that. And Danielle, your comment, is that a rule? Like I must have missed that meeting because nobody told me I had to do that.
I wouldn't qualify if that was
And that's the beauty of all this work. And kind of as I was going through that toward the end of it, and it was occurring to me that, hey, you just got treated again. I was just like, well, just be all in and just blow it all out. And I did. And then, the poor Guava is still wondering. She's now like, oh my God, is the monster awake? And I came back in and just said, it was weird and embarrassing. And I'm sure it'll be a story that I'll be telling. And lo and behold, here 3 days later, I am. And, but it actually was really good because it allowed me, I experienced that emotion very fully. I let myself be all the way into it, caught myself out, had a good laugh afterwards. And, that I think that's, there's no rule that we can't experience every emotion in the toolbox and experience them fully. And man, sometimes it just feels good to blow some stuff out. And I don't know what I got so wound up about or where my head was, that innocent little sweet girl, I'm in my imagination, she's like my daughter. And here I'm just spewing vitriol all over her for a little moment. And I hope that, that she had the reaction that I am now imagining that she did, but who knows? But yeah, it's just it as we pay attention to that stuff and as we get more in tuned, that conditioning can trick us. And it's not that we are being tricked on purpose. It's just by the time we're 18 years old, we've got 25,000 hours of conditioning by adults at least. And a lot of that stuff is there, and a lot of it's wonderful, and some of it's not. And to the degree that we start unwinding the some of it's that not, we just grow to live a life that's more unencumbered by these made up rules that we have decided to take on. And it doesn't have to be that way. We can be more present. And life gives us lots of opportunities to reset. I feel like I've hypnotized you both. Yeah, so
I just was staying in the stillness for a moment, playing with the thought of April Fool's Day every day. I like that as a support tool, to call it that. What if every day were April Fool's Day? And in a way, it's like, I almost want to say every day is April Fool's Day. I'm the fool, and I'm also the fooler, trickster, right? And make that very obvious. And how can that help me in my day-to-day meetings with the moment in my life? I actually really, really like that metaphor.
I do too.
It's almost like April Fool's Day and the trickster and the fool, without it being judgmental. Like there's nothing wrong with either of those roles in any of the situations, but it being an incredible mirror and gift for me. Because the lovely thing about April Fool's Day, for me, I'll speak for myself, is that when we have that sort of underlying expectation that we're going to be fooled, there's going to be funny things showing up and see if we catch them or not, there is no judgment. There's a curiosity, there's an openness, there's a flexibility. There isn't judgment. I mean, that's the way I look at it. So I'm just owning that. And the idea of being able to meet life, the moment like that, every day, every moment with there's the opportunity to be fooled and fool and all of that, and just taking it in my stride. Yeah, but that's, hey, welcome to life. And right, and welcome to me and my habits and my conditioning. And it's all like, yeah, but it's just, we're human, for heaven's sake. Give yourself a break, kind of thing. It kind of, I love the idea. There's so much playfulness. It makes life fun. That whole idea for me makes life fun, and it makes the idea of, for me, meeting the trickster and meeting the fool more of a playful opportunity than the opportunity to beat myself over the head because I'm not this and I'm not this and I'm this and I'm this. It's like there's the trickster and the fool and the wise person, right? The person who notices, the person who interacts with, or the, however you want to put it, interacts with the fool, who notices the fool and notices the trickster. No, I don't remember which finger was which, but who can, and put them aside, like just accept, that's it, that's what I'm doing, that's what it is, and then just, that's fine. And then, as you were talking about earlier, it just falls away. Whereas Byron Katie would say, who am I without this? I just really wanted to reflect on that in the stillness a little bit, because I really, really like that metaphor as an opportunity. Go ahead, Danielle.
I think one of the important elements, and I said it before, but it must be important to me in particular, is that we don't take ourselves so seriously, right? So in the three that you just described, the trickster, maybe, the fool, definitely not, the wise person, that person is probably serious, right? Like they take life seriously, they have wisdom, blah blah blah, right? Like that's sort of my conditioning, I guess, that people who are wise people are not jovial people. So that just keeps coming back to me, that this day is lighthearted, right? So if all the days were lighthearted along with that, catching ourselves out or catching someone else trying to fool us or whatever the case may be, that stayed lighthearted, and that would be a major paradigm shift for me, perhaps. But also when Bobby was talking about, what people can't know that I do this, right? Like I've definitely done that. I'm a peace coach, so I'm supposed to be peaceful all the time. Humans are not. They're just not, right? So it took me a little while not to take myself so seriously about it, not to make it about me, not to, and to begin to learn to play again. And that was one of the things that really I got from my sister's passing, right? Because my eldest sister passed, and she was my she was the person in my young life that could create play. Like if we had dolls or whatever we had to play with, she had the whole story, she had all the characters, she did all the, and I just played along with her, and it was great fun, right? So when she passed, it was like, well, who's gonna do that? I'm gonna have to do it for myself now. I'm not good at that, I can't do that. And I had to change those beliefs and allow myself to realize that I could be, but I just think there is a lot of presence tools in this holiday, and I just never would have considered that had I not been on the Presence Posse. Yeah.
Well, this is reminding me, a while back, I tried out for an improv sketch group, and we ended up doing some stuff at the center. We had weekly improv classes there for a little while. And I remember during that period, it was as though I had put a new filter on, and everywhere I went, I was looking for, where's the joke? What's funny about this? How could I incorporate this into my routine? And it just wearing that filter, just it changed the experience. It changed the way that I showed up, and it changed the way that I remember one time specifically that I was in a line at the grocery store, and it was a slow line, and the person that was checking things was kind of slow. So I just started kind of like riffing, making comments that were funny, and it wasn't long before now I'm entertaining this little group of 5 or 6 people that were all standing in line together, and it was kind of fun. And like when we left, as people were like checking out that were in front of me, it was like, hey, this was fun, see ya. And just total strangers, and not the typical reaction that you get when you're checking out at the grocery store. And adding, which we've all got the ability to do that. I mean, just thinking now, I'm like remembering that, and I'm like, oh, hey, that's weird. I don't really do that anymore.
Mhm.
And that's okay too. But it's something that I'm going to the grocery store later. Who knows how that'll unfold? Maybe I'll whip that back out again. And I think some of these roles that we have played in our lives, it's not that we need to transcend those roles necessary. That's like a skill set that we can go back and re-embody if we need to. I was involved with a fundraiser not too long ago, and I used to do that pretty actively for a couple of different projects. And very quickly getting on the phone and setting up appointments and doing stuff, it's like, oh yeah, I remember how to do this. I got this down. And it was just like, okay, let's play with this energy a little bit and see how it goes and where it goes. And it just, to a degree, I think it makes the journey a lot less robotic. And, I think the conditioned experience can be a very robotic and seemingly lifeless one, or routine tasks can be really, really rewarding. And that's a choice that we get to make. And just exercising that muscle just gives us a little bit more flexibility. Yeah.
I was standing at the kitchen sink washing the dishes. Speaking of like robotic routine things, how many times a day do we do that? And all of a sudden, and this can kind of thing can happen a lot. So all of a sudden, I'm washing the dishes, and all of a sudden, the water is running out of the tap, and all I need to do is lift this lever, and the water runs out of the tap. And I can twist it this way or that way to make it warmer or colder. And that's all I have to do. And magically, this water runs out of the tap. And somebody had to have thought how to make that happen from water that's like way the heck and gone far away, and cleaning it so that it's, potable or not or whatever. And then make all the materials to make that happen so that I can stand in my kitchen, whether it's raining outside or whatever's going on, I'm dry and warm. So there's another thing, right? And just being so mindful of, and this is like, it just comes over me. This like, wow. It becomes the seemingly mundane routine is magic. It's I don't know, divine, whatever. It's like, how does that happen? That's amazing. It's amazing. And the appreciation. That's why very often I'll say that for me, the moment has joy and ecstasy in it, because just the experience of look at all of this. Wow. So I just wanted to share that as far as
That's
how
beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, isn't it? And
Yeah.
even, I mean, my hair is turning gray more and more. How does that? I mean, somehow my body knows to do that. Or I get up in the morning, it's like, my feet know where they're supposed to go so that I land on the floor without hurting myself. Generally speaking, I know how to walk by it. My feet need to go there and there. Or if I'm cleaning my teeth, it's like exactly how much pressure to put or not. And I know how to spit out the tooth. There are so many, like everything is amazing. It's amazing. And it's mundane, routine. And is it ever really? Really? So, and if you don't mind, Danielle, coming back to the wise person, my thought went to a court jester
Mhm.
and how the court jester was likely often the wisest person in the room. Because how, I mean, you say the wrong thing, you're dead. You're hanging from a tree somewhere, right? So the court jester really had to pick up on everything and stay within all of this in order to be funny, but not insulting, or at least seem that way, etc., etc., etc. So who's the wisest person in the room? Potentially the funniest person in the room. The person who is able to look at things and laugh, but not maybe too much, and sort of gauge and be present to those who are there and where the limits are and all of that. And sometimes make a mistake. But that's where my mind went. The wise person doesn't have to be the serious.
Doesn't have to be the monarch.
No, not that either.
Jester. Yeah, because definitely my court jester would be that trickster role, right? And the wise person would be the monarch. So that's not necessarily wise. That's a position of power. And we're being fooled, right? Because they are presenting that facade, as Bobby was talking about earlier. Now I put this one on, now I put that one on, right? Like I'm the peace coach now, I'm the hypnotist now, I'm the therapist now, whatever. We all have roles that we play. And I had thought about this earlier when you were talking about thoughts, like you identify it as a thought and you understand that that's not your identity. That's a thought. But how many people don't know that differentiation?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like they are their thoughts. That's their thought. That's who they are.
Yeah.
And it's a whole different way of looking at things. And it's good just to shake that up, just like even in the mundane things, right? So we have these little they're not little, but we have conveniences that we take for granted. And that once you start to look at how did the last generation do this? How did the generation before that do this? I can be really irritated about having to do laundry, which I'm not. That's a really simple task for me. But some people, it does irritate them. I'm like, well, you're not using a washboard. You're not taking it down to the river, This is not that difficult. This is pretty easy. That's one thing that I always have gratitude for those things working when they work. It's so good. And technology, right? Same way. When it works, it's so good. When it doesn't, we're all kinds of irritated by it. We didn't have it 20 years ago to be irritated about. So yeah, there's a lot to being present. I think that can bring joy, that can bring a lightheartedness, that can bring, lots of different perspectives.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And help us reveal the April Fool in the moment so that we can
year-long
let it
fool.
go. As Bobby pointed out earlier, just let it go. Oh no! Oh no! Did that happen? Did you guys all see that, or was that just me?
I did.
Yes. Just the moment I said that, it's like poof, he was gone.
Yeah.
And it is April Fool's Day, so that's pretty funny.
He might still be frozen.
Bobby.
Yeah.
Yep. Looks
We
frozen.
hypnotized him this time.
Yeah. Hypnotizing the
There he
hypnotist. Hey, there's Bobby. Well, we've got a few minutes left, so I thought even though it's April Fool's Day, you guys get to choose whether you want to do a prank or not, and we don't have to reveal it even. but we're getting close to the end of our hour on this April Fool's Day and final day of the Easter holiday. And I suspect y'all have something going on, or maybe you're thinking of having something going on. So would anybody like to talk about what you got going on? And since Bobby seems to be frozen again, Danielle, do you have anything going on?
I don't. I have some thoughts about what I would like to do next. And I think what I would like to do next is another in-person retreat or workshop type thing here at the farm. And I have a collaboration in mind. So I'll be bringing that along. That's my next big thing, I think, that I'm going to be doing.
Very cool. And of course, as I usually say, at least I think I usually say it, and if not, well, I just lied, but it's April Fool's, so who cares? Put information on it, I hope you will, in the Presence Posse, the Free Presence Posse Facebook group, and so that people can check it out and get in touch with you. And I'm going to put your information back up there for a second. This is how you get in touch with Danielle, or of course in the Presence Posse group, or Messenger. And Bobby is trying to get back in, so I will follow along here and see if we can get him back. I guess there's some internet problems, which is really funny since you mentioned, Danielle.
Technology, right?
We have technology. And
Sorry.
the last week when it was supposed to be a Presence Posse, our internet went out and we had like nothing. And it's really interesting because that was one of the things I thought of was we used to have to do everything on our own, by hand, etc., and how easy it is to forget that. And I was like, how did we used to take care of this stuff? And how did we used to get our information when we couldn't just go ding, 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 ding on a phone or,
and it was such a long process. It's shortened that time so incredibly.
Yep.
Like if I had to write a letter to you to get an answer from you.
Yeah.
Long time.
And even before that, there was like horse riding 3 days to get. I'm just checking to see what Bobby is saying here. He's sending me messages. I'm in the room. No, you're not. Internet was wonky right up until it crashed. Okay. So I don't know if we'll be able to get him back, but Bobby also has some cool stuff going on. And one of the things he's done is he has put the link to the new book that he has written in the free Facebook group, The Presence Posse. So if you're in the free Facebook group, The Presence Posse, you will see the link there, and he has made that available to everybody in the group to have a look. So we say thank you very much, Bobby. And he mentioned and has mentioned before his other free Facebook group, Our Mindful Life, and he's got some really, really cool stuff in there. And just in time, he is back. I was just talking, Bobby, about the book link that you put in the Facebook group. Thank you for that. And your other Facebook group called Our Mindful Life, and how you've got some interesting stuff going on and information that you put in there. So do you want to say anything about that a couple of seconds before?
Yeah. Sure. I'm wrapping up a book about kind of all of this. It's called Unencumbered. Subtitle is Life in Flow. And it's really about kind of everything that we talk about here, but it's unique in that it's like a multimedia immersion product that I'm trying to create. I mean, I'm calling it a book because that's what we call such things, but it's a printed book. I've got the audio version in there, which I decided to do because that's the way that I wrote it. And then I had transcribed and edited, but I just, free flowed the content I wanted to have. And the edited version of it and the audio version of it are just different enough to think, if you read it, or you listen and read it, or you consume it, it's going to give a very different experience to the reader. And then each chapter has also got a something that I'm calling Om right now, which is it's a guided hypnotic experience that's designed to get us into the space that I call the divine I am, the spiritual being that's having the human experience. And So I'm really excited about it. I promised it like 2 weeks ago, and then I promised it last week, I think, and I'm still promising it next week. And the challenge is it's really done. But then like this weekend, I just had this idea and I'm like, oh, perfect. And so I'm adding that into it. Well, guided experience. So I'm pretty excited about it. It is free right now in the Presence Posse group. There's a link there. You can read it's a Google Doc. You're not getting all of the guided visualizations or the audio version. But if this is of interest to you and you want to explore, I think reading a little bit about it, you can very quickly say, wow, I want a lot more of this, or what in the world is this guy talking about? And whichever one of those you come to, that's fine. But I think this is going to be it's my effort to take the individual one-on-one work that I do, which I've taken about 247, I think is the current number, clients individually through this 90-day process. And when I do that with them one-on-one. I can only have one person that I'm doing that per month. So it's really, kind of two sometimes, but it's slow going. And this is my effort to be able to share this material one to many, to share this message to a larger group. And I'm also releasing it as a class on the Insight Meditation app. I'm one of the teachers there. And so you'll be able to go through it there as well as a class. So it's a book, it's an audio book, it's a instruction class, and all about this stuff. So I'm sure I'll be talking about it like every podcast for the next 90 days. So my explanations of it will get a little clearer as I go, I'm sure.
Maybe.
Very cool. Thank you very much. Thank you. So y'all know, go to the free Presence Posse group and grab the link. And of course, Bobby is available there if you have any questions. You can put them in the group as well. I will just say quickly that I've decided to have a little bit of fun, and actually just every once in a while I do this where I'm practicing a skill that I want to take a closer look at, or maybe even learn something new, or just improve. One of the things I'm doing now, I don't talk a lot about it, but I do mention it, having come out of the closet as a psychic medium and healer. I'm not your run-of-the-mill psychic medium and healer. I'm a very psychotherapeutic psychic medium and healer. So I don't do predictive work like tell you if you're going to meet your dream person or win the lottery or something like that. That's not how I work. I was born this way, and I see core issues, and I can help you sort of sort those out. Or at least that's the aim. So what I've decided to do is, because people are asking me, to offer at half price for people who have been considering starting their own private practice, whether you're a coach or a therapist or a counselor or a mentor or that kind of thing, human services practitioner, and you are not doing it or haven't been doing it, you're considering it and you haven't done it yet. Maybe you're stopping yourself. Maybe you need some more support. I am offering half price on a psychic mediumship and healing session with me. And you can choose between 45 minutes and 90 minutes to have a look and see what might be getting in your way, where your trickster might be, where you may be fooling yourself. And this is a real offer. It is April Fool's Day today, but all the things we're talking about are real offers. So if you would like that, you can contact me at the contact information below or in the Presence Posse group. And it is for a limited time. So you might want to act quickly. Half price for a reading of 45 minutes or 90 minutes. You get to choose. Let me know. So that is our session for today, our talk on presence and April Fools. And we hope that you have gotten some value out of it, or it just had some fun, or whatever. And you come to, if you're watching the replay or you think about something afterwards, even though you're live now, you are welcome to write to us in the Presence Posse group and make comments, ask questions, and even suggest topics for a future Presence Posse talk. We're always looking for new topics, so we are curious to hear what you would like to hear from us. So please let us know. Thank you, Danielle McMahon and Bobby Cobb, where you are in the Ethernet, and myself, Miriam Siegel, for today's talk. And we don't have our topic yet for next week, so follow along in our Presence Posse group and you will find out. Take care, everybody, and happy Easter if you celebrate Easter, and at least happy April Fool's Day. Bye for now. See you next week.